Welcome to Stowe Management Corporation's Always Creating Value podcast. I'm Mark Fowler, Stowe's president. On the second Wednesday of each month, we interview an individual who we believe demonstrates qualities and effort to create value consistently for their businesses, careers, and personal lives. The core element to our success with clients and their success with us has been the focus on helping them tap into and expand their abilities to regularly add value. Today, we have Lon Sofko with us. Let me read from the first part of his bio, and then we're going to let him jump in as well. Lon Sofko is a serial innovator, inventor, best-selling author, speaker, trainer, consultant. He's been on the ground floor and cutting edge of IT and computer industries for over 25 years. He's the creator of the, quote, first computer to save a human life, as coined by Steve Jobs, Apple Inc. That computer, along with 18 of Lon's inventions, are part of the permanent collection of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., along with 30,000 of Lon's professional papers. Lon also has 14 inventions in the collection of the Computer Industry Museum in Mountain View, California. Wow, Lon, and that's only 2 paragraphs. You want to jump in and fill in here a bit? Help us understand, wow.
Wow, yeah. Well, thank you for all of that. Yeah, that was only 2 paragraphs. And then I wrote 22 books, and I have 3 US patents, and I did my own PBS television show, and I'm in a Guinness Book of World Records. I mean, it's saved Betsy Ross to the history books. I mean, I'm the Forrest Gump of technology.
Forrest Gump, how would you? I'd love to ask you a question about that, but let's continue, talking about some of the other things you've done to give the audience some context about just, how great you are at what you do.
What? After all this, I'm not even sure what to say.
Well, when you and I talked, we talked about some of your inventions, and especially the ones dealing with the computers and the audio and helping disabled people are some of the things that, jump out to me.
Yeah, that was the biggest company that I had built. It was called Safko International. And it was the early days of computer technology. And one of the things that I realized is people were starting to learn how to computers, but physically disabled, especially quadriplegics, could never use a computer. They couldn't move. So I started back in 1978, taught one of the earliest computers actually how to speak. So looking back at it, I had the first commercially available talking computer. And then I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could have a conversation, types of things, and have it say things back to me? And again, coincidentally, I created a chatbot that would learn. So it was one of the first chatbots. And then after that, I said, wow, what if it recognized my voice? That'd be totally awesome. And that took me quite a while longer, several years, but I actually got it to recognize my voice recognition. And then I thought, let's connect it to the house and get it to make a telephone call or turn on a light or unlock a door, change a television channel. And by 1985, I had this computer system that would do all of that. And somebody said, have you ever thought of working with the disabled? Which I hadn't up until that point. And when I realized that there was 48.5 million quadriplegics in America, at that point, I dedicated the next 2 decades of my life to building the assistive technology industry.
What are some of the things that that come to you to do this? I mean, you seem to be able to almost like touch a table and know what it needs. You seem to be able to, generate ideas about things that some people would just walk by. Well, most people will walk by. I don't think of. I mean, the first time I think of talking computers is Dragon. When and I've worked with Dragon trying to. I don't know, it's about 10 years or 12 years. And obviously things have advanced in that. But so I wasn't thinking way back to 1985 or 1978. So
guess who's responsible for Dragon?
Wow.
It was called Voice Navigator originally when it came out. And we needed a company to help fund that section of it, because I was building so many things and I was a small company, drastically underfunded, and we knew that voice recognition was going to be a big deal. So I had contacted Dennis Mitchell, one of the executive vice presidents of IBM, who I was working in partnership, and I said, would IBM have any interest in coming in and buying this technology, funding it so that we can expand it so that it would be better, and then I have a license to get it back so I can give it to all of my customers. And IBM did eventually purchase all the intellectual property of the voice navigator, and then they changed the name to Dragon Dictate.
Wow. So I knew you when. I just didn't know I knew you.
Exactly.
Well, a big part of why I interview people about creating value and mostly on a consistent basis is that is the inspiration to get people to, what makes a person like you or a person like Ann or some of the other people that we've interviewed before, that it's sort of like in your DNA. Is there any way we can go back to your DNA a little bit about how it is that you're able to visualize these things? And like you said, you're running around many times doing this invention, as you said, a serial innovator. What drives that?
It really is kind of like DNA. And at first I thought it was a disability because I would come up with all these ideas and I would think that they were weird because no one else had ever thought about them. And then when I thought they were really good ideas, then I kind of felt responsible for trying to bring them to market. So the inspiration comes from the word inspiritu from the Greek. And what the Greeks believed is that when you came up with a good idea like that the gods touched you on the head and gave you that as a gift, inspirited. And so, because I've tried to study this to figure out why it happens to me. So I did find out that I am touched in the head. No question about that. But the other thing is, it's like remembering the future, which is also weird. It's like remembering someone's name or a telephone number or that actor in that movie, the movie that had that guy with the girl with the hair. I see things and all of a sudden it just like kind of comes to me, but then I can visualize a finished product. And in the case of voice recognition, voice synthesizing, virtual reality, I was 35 years ahead of now it's in our pockets and everybody takes it for granted. But I just saw it back in the late 70s and early 80s. And I thought, I got to build it.
Wait, I remember, you and I have talked quite often. I remember you were talking about God and plans. You remember that joke?
Yeah, John.
It just came to my mind when you were talking about that. It was a good one.
Yeah, John Cleese, there's one of from Monty Python. He just cracks me up. And he was in an interview and he says, you know how to make God laugh? Tell him your plans.
Right, because they never come out. They never come out the way. But you seem to be touched enough that your plans seem to come out,
Not always. I've had a lot more failures than I've had successes. I've had mushroom cloud failures, but I actually learned a lot more from the failures than I did from the successes. The successes I took for granted. The failures made me really do some retrospection and try to figure out what I did wrong and try not to repeat that mistake in the future.
Anything you can share with us? Because I know you're right.
Oh, yeah. For example, back in 2000, I came up with this digital rights management company because I'm in the speaking industry. I'm a professional speaker, and everybody was sending out these big, giant, bulky half-inch VHS tapes, and all the speakers bureaus had to have a warehouse full of these tapes so that when somebody wanted to see an example, and I was like, are you guys stupid? It's 2000. Let's do MOVs. Let's do QuickTime. We'll convert all of that analog into digital, and we'll put it up on a website so people can actually see it. And I built a company, and I worked with bureaus, and I worked with the National Speakers Bureau, and no one would touch it. They said, we're never going to digitize our videos because people are going to steal them. They're going to watch it, not hire us. And we'll never be able to get around the competition because they'll look at us, see someone else's, and they'll go with the other person. And I put a lot of time and effort into it, and it crashed. Well, now every speaker's website, everybody's got video, but in 2000, nobody would believe it.
So you're safe when you're on the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge. Is that
Yeah.
a good way to put it?
That's a really good way to put it. And my first book was another example, Build Your New House in No Time, How to Work with Contractors. In 2004, I was telling everybody, we're going to go into the largest residential home construction phase in the history of the United States. In 2004, and everybody's laughing at me. I said, no. Wall Street, you can't invest in Wall Street because of the dot-bomb. It's going to be real estate. It's going to be new homes. Now, Pearson Education said, we'll go with you. We'll test it out. Published the book in 2004. And guess what happened in 05, 6, and 7, in spite of what happened in 08.
So what did you sell? Did you sell any books, or was it?
Yeah, sold a lot of books. Yeah, especially to big realtor companies from around the country and home builders like Lennar, and they would give them out to the purchasers so that when they saw a crack in the concrete, if you can't put a nickel in the crack, it's not a serious crack. So it eliminated a lot of lawsuits. So the timing on that was perfect, as what happened with the Social Media Bible in 09.
Back a little bit to your, I don't know what else to call it when you say touched, but when you get an idea, an inspiration, a visualization, how do you go about helping others? How do you go about others tapping into that? You're an easy guy to talk to, I know, because we've talked many times. But helping people shift their consciousness and be able to tap into those ideas that they might be able to synergize with you. How do you do that? What is it that happens? I know your enthusiasm is kind of addictive, so maybe that helps, but what else?
That's really important. And that's really been the most important thing to me, is always adding value. And if you look at everything that I've done in my entire career, if you go through any one of the items on that crazy bio, it's always been about helping somebody solve a problem that they have. I mean, for example, when I came out with the Social Media Bible, I knew that it was going to change the world. No one else did. They said it's a fad. It's got no substance. But I believe that if I can write an 850-page book, everything there is to know, that people who read it could take advantage of it and know it ahead of time and be good at it before everyone else, give them a competitive advantage. Right now, I talk about AI, AR, VR, and IoT, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, and Internet of Things. Most people look at me and they just kind of glaze over. I'm telling you, those 4 technologies over the next 5 years are going to change everyone's life on this planet. So I just want to help people understand ahead of time.
Well, one of the things you and I share is an interest in and the development of systems, because in most of the companies I've worked with or re-engineered, the systems needed to change as well. You can't change people's ideas and the way they work business without helping them shift their operational dynamics and how they relate to them and how comfortable they are with them. One of the things that always came to me was that we needed to have a blend of the human and the computer. And some of the things that I see coming down the way nowadays, it's more about the computer than it is about the individual or the dynamic of the situation. With all of these 4 things coming out, where do you see the human fitting into that dynamic?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, the technology is not going the way I was hoping it was going to go 30 years ago. You're absolutely right. People are becoming narcissistic. I mean, it's always more about them, what they had for breakfast, and how good they look in that new sweater. And that's not a good way to use the technology. There's so much better ways of doing it. Now, on the other hand, the technology and social media in particular is being used particularly by people with Asperger's or autism, where they have social difficulties and they can connect with large groups of people and make friends without the fear of rejection. So there are ways that we can use the technology to help people, but the majority of uses really just seems to be narcissistic and technology oriented. What
would be, and you said it doesn't look like it's going to meet your particular needs or your particular vision. What would have your vision been? What were you seeing when you first decided to embrace these four areas?
Well, certainly not 1 billion selfies a day that no one will ever look at again. But I mean, in the early days, in 1985, computers were brand new. The IBM Peanut was the big one. Commodore 64, Macintosh was only a year old. So there was dinosaurs running around Silicon Valley. So my vision is how can we use this technology? Because there was no limit to what we can do with it. And I always continuously try to prove that by pushing the envelope. What can we do to help people, to help society, to make us better? I mean, when I die, I hope at my eulogy, somebody says, with a resume like this, yeah, he contributed more than he took out of society. And I think that's a responsibility that we all have. And computers gives us that opportunity.
Well, back, we kind of got sidetracked a little bit when we talked about Dragon, but can we go back to the disabled, the quadriplegic, because that's a perfect example of being able to help people where they need help, go to the heart of the issue. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Because, not just the idea, but some of the things that actually help them. You were talking about kind of in general, but, it's obviously gotten farther than that. So.
Well, the first customer that I worked with, and again, I really was new to disabilities. I'd never had a disability or anyone in my family. And there was someone from Invacare saw me playing with this computer and told me, wow, you could help disabled. So there was a patient that Yakima, Washington, late 40s, engineer, Thanksgiving. He's got a friend who's a quadriplegic, invites him over for Thanksgiving. He's wheeling his friend down the front steps of his home to take him home after Thanksgiving dinner, lost his balance with the wheelchair, flips up over the wheelchair, hit the back of his neck on the edge of the step, snapped his neck and became a C2 quadriplegic himself. Within the next couple of months, his insurance ran out, so they had to put him in a charitable hospital. He lost his job. Can't work if you're a quadriplegic. His wife couldn't handle the stress. She leaves him, and here he is stranded trying to commit suicide in this hospital. So when I heard about this, oh my gosh, my heart just, So I put it all together and I rushed to the hospital. I tried to train him and he just kept turning his head. He wanted to die, and they knew that he'd be dead in 30 days. But 30 days later, I got a call from the hospital. They said, Mr. Safko, could you please come up to the hospital immediately? So I got up there, and his bed was empty. The only time you see a quadriplegic's bed empty is when they move him to the ground floor. And I started to cry. And as I was leaving the room, he came out from behind the door with an atrophied hand to shake my hand and thank me for saving his life. That was it. That was it for me. That's what I had to do. And I did it time and time again, helping people all over the world.
Oh, that's wonderful. In 30 days. I mean, I don't often like to drill down on things too much, but how you actually, you said he turned away from you, but somehow you were getting to him?
Yeah, I insisted that the nurse leave it on the tray table with the wheels and leave it in front of him and don't take it away, whether or not he can't push it away. So he'd have to stare at it. So it took a week or so before he started looking at it and then talking to it. And it was talking back, and he kind of started to warm up to it. And then after a couple of weeks, he was really getting into it. And by the fourth week, he could call his family. He actually left the hospital 9 months later with a job and moved to Seattle. He was working again.
Oh, what a wonderful story. Wow. And when was this? What year was this?
Oh, 86.
Wow. And nobody else, just to be clear, no one else was doing this at all?
No one else was doing anything. Well, what happened next was I was a manager of an Apple store, and I was doing a demonstration for a customer. My secretary said, Mr. Safko, you have a phone call. And I said, don't interrupt me when I'm with a customer. That's the most important. No, you better take this call. So I picked up the phone and I said, who is this? He goes, John Scully, CEO of Apple. And I was like, yeah, come on now. Who is this really? Stop goofing around. And it was. So they flew me down to Cupertino and they bought a machine. I started working with them. I became a VAR, value-added reseller for Apple. And then I started researching. I mean, I contacted IBM. That's how I got my relationship with IBM. And Microsoft eventually did a bunch of work for them, setting up disability technology stores within Microsoft. And then we built Aisle 15, which was Apple's disability store. And no one else anywhere in the world was doing anything to help the disabled.
How did they hear about you? How did he hear about you?
Well, John Scully goes home. You heard about this gentleman that I just said he it saved his life. Well, this little NBC affiliate goes in and does a story about computer technology saves a human life. It's
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, and I didn't even know about it. So they do this little story up in Yakima, but they uploaded it to what they call the bird, the satellite, because if any other station picks it up, they got $150 for it. So of all places, of course, because it was computer related, Cupertino picked it up. So Scully is at home. He's having his first martini, turns on the news, and here I am saving people's lives with his company's computers.
Wow.
See, God, tell him your plans.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you have a little bit of the luck of the Irish here. Maybe I don't know if you're Irish, but you have that luck. Anything that we could learn about as it relates to you seem to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, I'm in weird places at the right time, because if I had the luck of the Irish, I'd have a lot more successes and I'd be rich. I'd be doing this live from Tahiti.
Oh, okay.
But unfortunately, none of these things have ever really paid off financially. I mean, I've always gotten by and always did okay, but it was the emotional and spiritual rewards that were overwhelming. I'm very rich with that. Unfortunately, you can't pay a mortgage with that, but just kidding.
Well, you've evolved. I went back through some of the things that we were talking about recently to prepare for this interview. And, we were looking at your interview, your bio, and it's very diverse and very broad, as you said. And you're kind of hard to pigeonhole, but lately in the last 10 to 20 years, you've been focused on being an influencer, a corporate speaker. And you mentioned something about the desire to teach, and this is very important. You want to expand on that aspect?
Yeah, I love, I was looking at what I was doing because I'm about ready to rebrand myself now. I mean, I told God my plans, and then God said, hey, here's something called COVID. So it's time to rebrand. So yeah, I was looking at that myself, and the underlying theme, because you say I can't be pigeonholed, it really is teaching and helping other people, whether it's creating technology to help people or teaching executives all about social media for the last 10 years, or I have that one product and company that I told you about where we do school projects. So at the last minute, kids can download an entire school project for under $10 for $9.95. And within a few hours, they have an architectural replica, the White House or California Mission. So that was another idea that I came up with. How could I help school children and parents? So I've had over 50,000 kids go into that store and buy these little $9 projects for their schools. And I've got hundreds and hundreds of smiling kids with A's, A report cards, showing me the report card, showing me the project.
Wow.
And so rewarding.
You're sort of like a business nonprofit.
Yes,
you're charitable.
I perfected that.
Let's go back a little bit to the visionary aspect of it. And I think, I don't know where this comes with you, but for me, when I'm re-engineering companies and I'll step in, and in a very short period of time, I can see it done. I can't explain it, but it's like I've got it all in my head somehow, and we just start coloring it in. It's like, paint by numbers type of a thing. And though it obviously changes, everything morphs as you make changes to things morph and, course correct and whatever. But I'd like to go back to that visionary stuff with you. And again, how you articulate it to those people around you, because it's one thing to be, sort of creating value within ourselves, and the other is to motivate those people around us, so that they don't feel in many ways intimidated. Well, Lon is the one that comes up with the ideas, and everybody sort of dumps everything your way, as opposed to realizing that, it's all about everybody. And that there's somebody sitting in that organization or in your group or whatever has a piece to the puzzle that none of us have other than that person. So how do you help them? How do you help them get comfortable with putting their piece on the table, their little jigsaw puzzle piece on the table?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of answers in here, one of which is coloring by numbers. That's absolutely true. This inspiration process that I have is once I get the idea for something, I got a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like when it's done. And yeah, of course, there are minor changes. So for example, if I'm going to build a complex piece of furniture, I'll think about it for 2 weeks and I'll have every piece in my mind, exactly how I'm going to cut it and fit it together. And then I just simply go out to the workshop and do that.
Oh,
So
wow.
I don't even have to think about it hardly. So, but even something as complicated as a company or a new concept, I can see what it should look like. So now all I have to do is do that. So, but a lot of times I have to surround myself with people who will help build up my weaknesses. And that's something that I had to learn early on. And I had no trouble with it, because if I'm going to be successful, if I'm going to reach more people, help more people, I have to turn over some responsibilities. So when I ran my computer company, I had about 35 employees. I would come in the morning and I would just unload all these ideas onto everybody that I had during the night, and they'd roll their eyes and take notes. But then I would come back an hour later and say, okay, now what can I do to help you get there? Let's talk about what you think this ought to be. And then we would discuss it a little bit. I'd let them run with it. And almost always the finished product was much, much better than if I actually created it myself, because these people had other talents that I didn't have. So I got rewarded that way because I could see how they were being rewarded by participating in the creativity.
That's wonderful, because yeah, people are, again, I talked about it in the introduction about helping people tap into their own creativity. A lot of people in businesses or organizations, they're doing the same thing over and over. Oftentimes because they don't get the time. They don't get the time to do what you do, which is to step back and think about something for 2 weeks and figure out how it's gonna be put together. They must, your 35 people in that organization must have loved you, but how did you have to earn the right to walk in every day with your dreams? Like, oh, well, here comes Lon,
There was eye rolling, trust me, there always was, because it just meant extra work for them. But the team that I built was motivated by creativity. And they would come out with me and work with a girl that was born without arms and legs. No arms and legs, is like a Barbie doll with a head. I mean, working with her and seeing her turn on a light and changing a television channel and the smile on their face. Why, all they have to do is do that one time, and they know the contribution that they're making, and they're excited to get back. And it's
wow.
oh my gosh, did you ever think of this? Or what if we did this instead? So they got as rewarded as I did because they participated.
One of the things that's very popular today in Gallup is the Gallup organization is very rightfully so promoting the need for engagement. And every year they do studies about engagement and how important. And one of the things that I often feel is missing is that we want everybody else to be engaged, but we as the leaders, the managers, the owners, whatever, often aren't as engaged. And obviously you're engaged. And I think you're engaged with what you're doing. And, by helping them spend time with your development process and that young girl, that's amazing engagement. That you can't talk anybody into that kind of stuff. Anything more you want to talk about that? I mean, you're very enthusiastic, obviously, and some of the things you do are just home runs like no tomorrow. But how do you debrief with them, for instance, about what they just saw and help them coalesce as it relates to them as well?
Yeah, and that's something that was really important. My management style I considered as a butterfly. I went from flower to flower and I pollinated. So I would grab my coffee, not even walk into my office, and I would start back in engineering. And I would go to every single person's desk. And I know for a CEO that it's ridiculous, and I was criticized for it, but I wanted to know what they were working on. I would make it clear to them that any obstacles that they had, it was my responsibility to remove, not theirs, so that they knew that I always had their backs. And by doing this, I could take the information from each other and disseminate it to everybody else, like pollen. And so by 10 o'clock, everybody had a pretty good idea the state of the entire company, what our challenges were, what milestones we've passed. So everyone I think felt engaged. And I have not seen that kind of style in a lot of companies. It seems to me that the bigger the company, the more difficult it is for the upper management to embrace creativity. They really don't want it. They want people to fall in line, do what's expected, follow the rules that HR sets out for them, and don't mess up what they've been doing. They've been successful, so don't break it. It's not broken. So that's the frustration I always find.
Yeah, it's a tough one for a lot of people as they grow. A lot of organizations grow, and as they grow, they need systems. And this goes back to the question that we were talking about earlier about the blending of the human dynamic with the data processing or IT dynamic. Excuse me, giving both the value they need in order to do the job that they need. And so much of that is slipping, is slipping away. I'm curious about again, I go back to the disabilities. Are you still in some way involved in what's happening in the world of disabilities and quadriplegics or is that, that was in the past and you've got new home runs to look forward to?
I still care deeply about the disabled, but I'll be honest with you, I don't participate in it anymore. After 2 decades of building that company, it didn't end very well. There was a hostile takeover by the shareholders and they pushed me out, and they were intent to bankrupt the company. And they had already cut a deal with the bankruptcy judge to buy the company, which was worth about $5.5 million at the time, to buy it back out of bankruptcy for $100,000 and get rid of all the shareholders, including myself. And that turned into one of the bloodiest and worst battles I've ever fought in my life. And what I realized was I could not win against multimillionaires. So it had gotten to the point where the company was closed, and I was still helping disabled out of a spare bedroom, building computers and delivering them. And I knew that that couldn't continue. I owned all of the intellectual property rights myself and licensed it back to my company for $1 a year perpetually. So as long as the company was solvent, they would always have 100% of the intellectual property rights. Well, once they destroyed the company, that contract became null and void, and all of the rights reverted back to me personally. They threatened me and said that if I benefit in any way whatsoever from any of that intellectual property, the exact quote was that we'll see to it personally, you and your wife spend the rest of your lives in a trailer park. And then they went on to try to destroy me. So what I did, this is my favorite part of the whole company. I took all the intellectual property rights and I made it public domain. I gave it to everybody, gave up all my rights and gave it to the public. And everything you see today, 80% of it is probably something that I owned, but now everybody owns it and everybody's benefiting. They lost, the disabled won, and I'm happy for that.
Wow. Talk about that little tears you were talking about, that brought a little tear to me here. That's it would seem that one of the things that maybe a lesson learned there is to be spend time with people and work with people who are focused on creating value, not on feathering their nest and making somebody else, sometimes that's very hard to do, but any lesson learned for you from but that would be one of my lessons learned about that.
Oh, for sure. I replay that to this day. I replay that entire scenario. The truth is that they were very warm and considerate and engaged and rich, and they wanted to help the company and they wanted to build the company. And then we got several private placements. We were raised over $1 million, and we started to grow the company. And then that's when they knew that it was the right time to try to bankrupt it and kick me out. So I didn't see it coming. Honest to goodness, there was nothing that I could have done. Anybody who knew them had no idea, and they had a history of doing this. So I ended up having to sue them under RICO, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization, and I finally dropped that because they attacked back, and it was a mess. But no, just do the best you can and cover your butt. That's what I did with that contract. It was in the disclosure documents. They didn't see it. I didn't bring it up just in case. And it was nothing bad. The company always had the rights. They owned everything as long as they paid me that $1 a year.
It was very kind of you to do that. You in the bio that I read from. You talked about the 30,000 personal papers or something at the Smithsonian. Does that material, that's part of that material, the disability computers?
Yeah, that was another Forrest Gump moment. When the company shut down, I saved all my prototypes and every document. I'm just kind of crazy like that. Every single document from the day that I opened the company, I had in these plastic tubs. And we moved a couple of times and my wife said, you got 19 of these tubs. You got to get rid of it. So I said, yeah, but that's the whole company. That's everything that we did for 2 decades. We can't keep dragging this around the rest of our lives. So I took all the tubs and dragged them out to the street because it was garbage day. And I heard the truck coming a couple hours later and I dragged them back into the garage and didn't tell my wife. And later that afternoon, you're not going to believe this. I get a call and I answer the phone. I said, who is this? And he says, I'm the director of the Museum of American History for the Smithsonian Institution of Washington. And I swear I gave him the same answer. Okay, come on. Who is this really? And it really was. And I said, what can I do?
Scully again?
No, it could have been Scully kind of goofing around. No, it actually was David something. He was the director. So I said, can I help you? So he said, well, myself and my staff did extensive research and they believe that you made the greatest contribution to the human computer interface, as did anyone. I was like, cool. Thank you for calling me to tell me that. He said, no. He says, do you have any prototypes or original assembly lines, or do you have any documents? I said, you're going to love this. So 3 weeks later, the senior archivist flew in from the Smithsonian in Washington, and we spent 4 days in a hotel room going through those 19 tubs. And that's how they took the entire company from the first document to the last document. And that's what they were so proud of, because you can study it linearly, how entrepreneur brain works or doesn't work.
Oh, wow. Entrepreneur and creative. That's for sure. Again, you may get yourself in trouble, or, things may not work, but there's a little bit of magic going on there a bit. You cross your fingers there. So let's go back to some of the other inventions, because I know, what do you call it? Chat or bot? Can you delve into that and how that became part of reality for you?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, chatbots have becoming really popular, especially in customer service. I mean, you see it on Amazon and pretty much everywhere. They start out with chatbots, and if they can't answer your question, then you go over to a live person. So again, I was only 35 years ahead of my time. But what happened was I wanted to create a piece of software. This is 1978. It was on a Timex Sinclair, a $99 computer that had, by the way, I was styling 16K of memory. Yeah. So I wanted to create this software where if I typed in something like, hey, let's talk about your cat, the computer will say, well, what do you want to talk about my cat? My cat is this. And we could have a conversation back and forth. I thought that would be kind of cool. And because I had just heard about the term artificial intelligence and what Marvin Minsky and all of those people were starting to do with it. So I created this type talk. I mean, all it would do is put something up on a screen. I could tell it something. But the cool thing is I taught it to learn. So if I asked it a question about something that it didn't know, it would ask me questions enough. And that the next time I asked it about that, it would be able to have a conversation about it. And now they call that artificial intelligence chatbot with deep learning. Had no idea. And that was the basis for all of the other stuff that I did with the disabled. I then added voice synthesis and then voice recognition, and then added it so that it would control the house and appliances around me, which was the first home automation. And it just kind of grew from there.
Wow. I'm trying to remember when I got my first, portable computer, which was a K-Pro, by the way.
K-Pro.
Yeah.
Andy K. He just passed away here in San Diego.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, Andy K.
Solano Beach, right?
Yeah, you know that. Wow, cool.
Yeah, I had a couple of them. Yeah, it was. I was so proud. of course, I have scars on my ankles and my legs, from that that big thing bumping against me all the time.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, in 1978, I guess you were working on bigger. Had you worked on bigger computers before? Had you been? I remember going to college and doing our Fortran and all that other stuff.
COBOL.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, back in the 70s, I was always fascinated by technology, and I'd heard about something called a computer. Oh my goodness, a computer. So I went to all of the universities around me: Westchester, Pace University, Hofstra University, Mercy. Mercy University is the same place that Mark Zuckerberg went. We're alumni. And I wanted to get a computer science degree, and no university had one. So I was just taking these little courses here and there to learn more about computers. And I took Fortran and COBOL and some other programming languages. And that was useless on the small computers because they were all programmable and basic. So I taught myself how to program BASIC and just got in there and just enjoyed the heck out of it. Just every time I would write a routine and it would do what I wanted it to do, it was this huge excitement. And to be honest with you, yes, I did work on a big IBM UNIVAC in college, but that was worthless. But I was also working as an engineer because in 1978, I graduated with a civil engineering degree. So the company I was with had these little TI-99s, the little calculators, and I programmed some of the most sophisticated computer software for engineers: coordinate geometry, earthwork computation, hydrologic computations, so that they could actually have this little thing in their hand and do all the calculations in the field that would require an IBM or a UNIVAC. So that software then spread all throughout New York, through Westchester County, and eventually New York State was using it. So that really was my first success in distributing software.
If what I'm hearing is correct, is you focus a lot on the simplicity of things. You bring things down to a more boots on the ground, or in this particular case, a little machine in your hand. It sounded like you were way ahead of the iPad or my BlackBerry, or anything that we can now hold on our hand and is as powerful as what a mini computer used to be, or more.
And it's funny you should say that. I got another Forrest Gump story. We got time for it. I promise I'll keep it short. I got a call from Dr. Thomas Furness. Dr. Thomas Furness is the person who invented virtual reality. He worked at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base with several other 18 PhDs, and he spent 20 years creating virtual reality. And he had just retired, and he took all of his technology and he was setting up shop over in the University of Washington, UW. And he asked me to come up. I had no idea why. And I show up in the room, and there's Thomas Furness and an attorney, have no idea. Bill Gates's dad, Bill Gates Sr., was there to talk about possibly investing in my company. And so I said, "Why did you ask me to come?" And he said, "It took us millions of dollars and 18 PhDs, 20 years to develop virtual reality. But the machine that you just put on the table cost $2,500 and you did it yourself. I wanted to meet you."
Congratulations.
Is that the weirdest thing?
Well, it's kind of like the difference between right and wrong, or sense and nonsense. I mean, it's just so. Is there something to be learned from this, for all of us, normal people, about learning how to be more creative, but at the same time much more available and simplistic? Or I don't mean simple, I mean simplistic. I mean able to get something done in a much more effective way. Anything we can learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You don't need 18 PhDs and billions of dollars to create something. You don't. Sometimes solutions are right there in front of you. I always love the fact that if you take something, start with something like a computer, you can get it to do anything pretty much that you can imagine. You might have to build something to connect to it, like a USB or something like that, or Bluetooth. But look at what's here. Just take the existing things around us and figure out how you can connect them in the most efficient way to solve a particular problem. An example: my wife mops I mop too. It's not just my wife. I'm not sexist. And so she takes the mop, puts it in the garage. If she puts it mop side down, it makes the floor nasty and it stinks. If you put it mop side up, you stain the wall. So she says, can you fix this? Yeah. So I went to the 99-cent store and I bought a plastic bucket and I cut a V notch in it and I put a screw in the wall. So now when she's done with the mop, she takes the mop, puts it in the bucket, lets it hang over the side. It's nice and neat, never falls down. Water drips into the bucket, evaporates, and it doesn't stink. That was a 99-cent solution to a problem that everybody has.
Wow. Why? I would have gone to the hardware store. Why did you go to a 99-cent store? You knew where the right thing was.
Yeah, plastic, because you're dealing with water. 99 cents, because I don't want to spend a lot of money.
Okay.
The word entrepreneur is French origin. It means cheap.
Is it really?
No.
Oh, okay.
But ask any entrepreneur, and that's the definition they'll give you.
I know. I've always avoided startups because of that.
We ain't got no money.
I know.
Just good ideas.
They don't have any money until all of a sudden they're running up against the wall and they're in trouble and then whatever. One of the things I love about what you do is the inspiration to others. I mean, my just talking to you, I remember the first phone call we had. I've remembered all the other ones that we've had, and it's often, for me, when I walk into clients and the business is tired, and a lot of reasons they're tired is that they're not invigorating themselves. They're not changing the patterns. They're not taking the time like you do to talk to people in a genuine way. They don't often, because they're I want to say we're depressed, but they're stopped in their tracks as well. And you do a very good job of that. From a learning perspective, we were talking about doing furniture. I've designed and implemented some 70 systems over the years. Wow. And somewhere about halfway through, I realized that I needed to get smarter at this in a unique way. And what I did is I went to Santa Monica College and I took 3 semesters of woodworking.
Oh, wow.
Building from scratch, no nails, no nothing. You had to, everything was doweled and whatever. And for me, what that did for me was, from a creative perspective, was tapping into what you do visually in your head, because I couldn't, for whatever it was, having to visualize what the particular piece of furniture was. And then we had to make our own wood. You had to get, big, long, go to a lumber company, get the wood, cut it, sand it, grind it down, do whatever you needed to do. It's been so long since I've done it, but it forced me to do things much more from inside my head, to see how things were 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional. Any ideas to help others do that? I also took photography classes for the same reason. I enjoyed photography, but I wanted to see photography. I wanted to be trained in a way about how to see things. And I was just wondering if you've got some suggestions for any of us, people who need to boost our creativity a bit, or, some ways that we might learn how to do that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I forget to talk about it, because I just kind of do it without even thinking about it. But I was asked about 10 years ago by a speakers bureau that said, hey, can you teach innovation? You're the most innovative person I've ever met. And can you come and do a keynote or a class or a full day? Oh, I said, yeah, no problem. I'll have that thing whipped up for you by the end of the day. It's what I do. 3 years later, it took me 3 years to figure out what the actual process was that went through my head. And it boils down to what I call the 3 C's: collect, calculate, and communicate. So I'll give them to you real quick, because it's fun and it's easy and it really does work. Collect. Think about what you're trying to do. If you're trying to solve a problem, and remember, not all inventions are solving problems. Sometimes they're just cool. Angry Birds didn't solve a problem, but it made $64 million the first week. Yay. So just think about what you want to do. As you continually think about this on a daily basis, you'll see things around you that will all of a sudden say, wow, that fits in. You want to buy a new car. You think about the make and the model. Now, every 10th car that you look at is that make and model. Or you need a new purse. Everybody's carrying that, because you become sensitized to that. Do that for a while. Then what happens is your brain will take all these miscellaneous pieces, sort out the ones that are important, throw away the others. It happens at night. It happens when we sleep, when we're not, if we're being distracted because we can't multitask. That's a proven fact, no matter how anybody says you don't multitask. So at night, you're sleeping. That's when most of the good ideas come. We've all woken up in the middle of the night and it's like, oh my gosh, the cure for cancer. I know that's so big in the morning, I'm going to remember that. And then you forget. It was, what was that? Yeah. So the ideas then come to us in the shower, when we're driving, when we're exercising, because we're not being distracted. So turn the darn iPhones off, get away from the music, only listen to these podcasts. So then that's the calculate part. And then when your brain has got it, bam, it just comes to you and you say, ah, there it is. And your brain will show you an image of what it's supposed to look like. Practice that like the piano. Just practice it and you'll get good at it. And it happens fast and often.
Wow. Go ahead. What's the next? You said that's collect, right?
The collect part is be very sensitive, be aware, think about it, look around, look on the internet, look at magazines you've never looked at before, watch the Discovery Channel, listen to Mark Fowler's podcasts, because there's so much creativity in those. And that's the collect part. The calculate, you got to kind of just be patient while your brain is sorting through all of this. And you keep collecting, throwing junk at your brain. And then when your brain is ready, the communicate is the last part, but it won't communicate unless you give it some quiet time. So you got to stop looking for this need for noise. That's what I used to say with my daughter. She'd be vacuuming, TV's on, radio's going, headsets on, vacuuming. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, I like that. I said, that's the need for noise. Turn it off. And as soon as here's the challenge I give everybody. The next time you're in the car, make sure the radio is off and you got dead silence. Go to do whatever you're going to do and come home. And I guarantee you by the time you get home, you're going to have solved the problem. It's already in your head.
Well, there's a woman, Mary Parker Follett, back in the late 1880s, 1880s, early 1900s. She's considered the prophet of management, and she was, I think she died in the 1930s. And she has something called the law of the situation, and it basically says that, and it's from a business perspective. It says that they use the word solve the problem, but the situation, the solution lies within the situation, not from the organizational development or organizational chart that says downward. It's about this big cluster of people, or a small cluster of people, identifying and working in that situation. You will solve that situation without having to do all the darn things you do, or don't get distracted by the boss who says, well, this is the way we're going to do it. Doesn't mean the boss doesn't approve it, but it doesn't allow and that's exactly what you're doing. You're in a very methodical way. You're collecting the information from the situation and finding out what happens so that you can get that thing taken care of. It's amazing.
Absolutely. That is absolutely true. And too many people, when they're trying to solve a problem, they look in their industry for a solution. Let me tell you, if it's a problem and it's in your industry and someone had solved it, you would have already known about it. So don't waste your time and don't be distracted.
That's a great quote, guys. That's a wonderful quote. So
yes, Henry Ford was famous for the assembly line. The assembly line existed before, but not in the automotive industry. Every car was built by hand, which made it was prohibitively cost ineffective. So he didn't know how to solve it. He looked at all the other car manufacturers and they didn't have a solution. Of course they didn't. So he takes his lunch, frustrated, goes out to a potato farm in Detroit, sits under a tree, he's eating his lunch, and he's watching the truck pick up the potatoes, actually digging them up out of the ground. The potatoes are rolling up on the belt. Yeah. And he's looking at the potatoes and he says, oh my God, if I replace the potatoes with cars and not have the engineer move with the car, but have the car move in front of the engineer, I can use untrained, unskilled labor, and I could punch out a car every 60 seconds instead of one a month. He went from one a month to one every 60 seconds because he got out of the office, got away from his industry, got out of the box, and he gave himself some quiet time, and the answer showed itself.
Yeah, you do really need to change. You really need to change venues. You need to be able to not be seeing the same thing or hearing the same thing. You need to shift. You need to shift. You seem to do it. You seem to do it automatically in your head. That's wonderful.
Well, I have to do it. When I wrote the Social Media Bible, I had a friend who had a cabin in the mountains in way upstate Arizona. And I would go up there for a week and punch out 4 or 5 chapters and come home, change my laundry and go back, because I cannot be creative in front of my computer in the office at all. But as soon as I isolate myself, the creativity just pours out. I mean, I literally wrote an 850-page book in under 9 months.
Wow. I didn't realize it was 800 pages. Wow.
Yeah, either did John Wiley and Sons when they went to bind it.
Well, listen, we're coming up on about 6 or 7 minutes, and
oh no, this is fun.
I know it is fun. We will have you back, that's for sure.
Please.
But I know that James and Ann have questions. I know that James he can't wait, because he always comes in and he has some idea. I awesome. Still have about 40 questions for you myself, but James, I know you would like to share a bit. You always do, so.
Yeah, no. You know what? I really do appreciate it. And Lon, thank you. It's really, really, really an honor. It really is. It's just, once again, it's been one of those things where I would never have come to this podcast to listen, because I didn't know who you were in the way I do now, and how much you've been involved in. And, my dad was a aerospace engineer and an inventor, and, was busy doing stuff in the utility room when I was a kid. And we had a TRS-80, one of those guys you get from Radio Shack. Yeah. And I remember the coding books he used to have all over the place, the Fortran Bible and all this kind of, they're like Bible paper with the little teeny type. Yes. And it's just, I got, and I just, unfortunately, I really wasn't sharp enough to be an early adopter. I was surrounded by opportunities to be. And a lot of my learning has come after one might think learning starts to taper down, And so really what I appreciated most about this conversation was, the level to which you talk about core thinking and creativity, and, really all the different questions you've talked back and forth with Mark about have had different examples of how that works, along with practical examples. Like, I work on websites now. A lot, and we are concerned with ranking and stuff like that. And I can see now that what you started back then is matriculated down to accessibility in Google ranking metrics now. It's actually a metric all on its own to ensure that sites are accessible to people who are impaired visually or hearing or and physically. So I don't know if you were involved in that whole process, or if that's something that, I can just see the origins of in what you're talking about, but the results of and what I have to do every day, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, honestly, the technology industry is really incestual. I'll just give you an example, tool tips. When you move your cursor over a button and a button pops up and tells you what that button does, I invented that March 6, 1986, and I have the copyright on it. So I'm using it. Why did I invent it? Because quadriplegics couldn't use their arms. So they moved the mouse by moving their head. So as they moved over the button would pop up and tell them what the button did, because they couldn't hold a manual. They couldn't go through and learn how the software worked. Apple looked at it. They loved it, because Apple and I had to exchange all of my ideas with Apple once a month. So the following, yeah, you're already smiling. The following system upgrade, guess what's in there? Tool tips. So I contact Apple and said, dudes, what are you doing? You're killing me. You can't take that. I own that. And they said, yeah, but it's so cool. It needs to be in our system. And that was the end of the conversation. They just took it. There was 125 things that Apple stole from me. And I'm going to use that word because I can prove that I owned it, but they just thought it should be in the Apple operating system. Now, here's the funny thing. Microsoft comes in and steals the Mac operating system and builds Windows. Guess where all of my stuff went? All into Windows. So, and everybody talked and everybody looked at everybody else's products. So yeah, you're absolutely right. No, I did not have hands-on, but a lot of the work that I did and work that I did with others from other companies, it eventually grew into this internet thing. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I believe in accessibility just on a principled basis, and I don't really have that much more to I thank you for IoT. I wasn't aware of how to of that lingo, and I love lingo. So but at any
Look at
rate, I
those
just want
four.
yeah, I know, but IoT was like, wait, what's that?
It's
I had to
important.
look it up. Oh, I know. Well, I say I know, but
Yeah.
I know more now how important it is. And I liked a lot of this sort of the patina of just kind of personal, spiritual, kind of the idea that a lot of ideas happen on the plane of inspiration, and you get out of the way and they come fully formed. And that was just such a neat part of this interview. But
Thank you.
I'm not, yeah. So I'll mute myself after that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Anne, you said you raised your hand there.
Yes, I had so many questions, very many, but two that are particularly on the front of my mind. And especially I'd like to hear your input on this, what is considered new terminology called the metaverse, coming from one of our very best friends over there at Facebook. And I'd like to hear your interpretation of his terminology.
Okay. Well, I was going to give you a truthful answer until you said one of your dear friends over at Facebook.
With a smile.
Well, the metaverse comes from a term from a book from the late 80s, and it just kind of means this gigantic, non-real universe. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on over at Facebook, good and bad. We've seen some stuff over the last couple of years. We've heard conspiracies about stuff that's going on. There's some of their actions have caused severe polarization between their members, and a lot of people are running away from Facebook as if it was a disease. So they had to do something. The shareholders put the pressure on the board of directors put the pressure on the employees. You got to come up with something new. So they came up with this thing called Metaverse. I've been involved in virtual reality for 15 years. I've put over 1,000 hours in on Second Life. I know what virtual reality is. I know how it works. I've designed it. I know augmented reality. And I got to tell you, that video that Facebook put out with Mark was 100% PR. None of that is going to work. There's no bandwidth. No one is spending $300 for goggles. Kids are not going to wear goggles to talk to one another. There was so much nonsense in that video, but the shareholders loved it.
Yes, I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I have the device and I use it for working out, but the thought that that would be easily used for you and I to interact was so remarkable that I was astounded and having worked with it. So that was my first question. My second has to do with the fact that the CES is happening right now, the Consumer Electronics Show. And I've never been, I've always wanted to go. But I would like to hear from you, I know you've looked at what's going on there and what's kind of ticked for you as something interesting that's coming out. Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been to CES. You know what? It's not fun because it's so big and so spread out and so crowded. It's not fun. So if you didn't go, don't worry about it. You're much better off having someone go do the dirty work and bringing you back the best information. And that's why I didn't go this year either. But the artificial intelligence, the drone technology, and by far all of the robots. And I'm not just talking about the robots that could actually come into someone's home, or let me tell you, there's a big market now, sex robots. I said it, I'm sorry, you may have to edit it out, but there's lots of different applications that we're using robots for, but they don't have to be human-like because of the advancements that they've made over the last couple of years in artificial intelligence, the ability for these machines to connect to the internet, and even more importantly, this deep learning, where if they don't know something, they could almost instantly go find it and come back with the answer. Just like, hang on a second. I don't want to say her name or she'll start talking. Okay, I unplugged her. Alexa. I mean, if she doesn't know what it is instantly, she'll find it. So that kind of thinking has been put into all of these machines. And that gets back to this IoT, this Internet of Things, which is also the next biggest thing, because honestly, I mean, our doorbells are talking to our phones, for God's sakes. Our cars are talking to us. And it won't be long before the toaster gets pissed off at the refrigerator.
Now, one last one. Can I trouble you with one last?
Oh, I love this. I love this. Please.
The when 4G came out, I was not so sure what that was and how good it was. And now when I look back at all the things that are possible, including Zoom, because of 4G, what do I not see possible with 5G?
Yeah, they haven't done a really good job of marketing 5G as well as they did 4G. And I'll tell you why, is everybody's got smartphones. So all of the smartphone manufacturers, Samsung and Apple in particular, are not making as much money as they did during 4G because people aren't buying new phones, they're just replacing old ones. And attrition is not enough to build an industry. Okay, so back to 5G. 5G is going to be a huge enhancement because they're going to decentralize these cells. And remember, a cell tower has about a 2-mile radius, and you have to be within there, and then you switch between cells and you jump and you get transferred. Well, what they're looking to do now is to take that and break it down, not into 2-mile cells, but really 30-foot Bluetooth range cells. And wherever they can put these, I mean, anywhere along the highway, in downtowns and stores. So if you're connected that close to the T1 link, to the main line, that means that your phone, no matter where you are, you're going to have significantly higher band rate. So that means that you can do more sophisticated things like gaming and virtual reality and things that require a lot of data transfer. And the thing that's driving that is video watching, just like the Mark Fowler podcast.
Right. And James and I will never put down your relationship with porn because that's what made everything so great in video.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. Thank you. Everyone is afraid. It's the naked elephant in the room.
I can remember when I was with FTP.
Think about it every day.
Yeah, and we had all this. We were the first people to do all that online stuff. I mean, we took over a big network of florists, 20,000 florists, and got these orders going online. So I was up in Canada finding another place for us to have a backup. And I'm walking through this huge institution, and I was like, who are all these people? And that was porn.
Yes. Yep. There was a place in Arizona that I'd walked through. It's something cactus. I forgot the name of it. And I was walking through, and it was a giant warehouse that they split in half. Half of it were servers, and half of it was about 300 employees that just managed all of this. And I said to him, I said, what do you guys, because they were just data streaming. So I said, I've never seen anything like this. Hundreds and hundreds of servers. And I said, what do you do? Oh, he says, porn. I said, wait a minute. He goes, no, porn. He says, my company generates $54 million a week.
That's what I found.
And that's what built all the servers. That's what built the internet. That's what built the T1s. That's what built Microsoft and Larry, what's his name? Not Page, the other guy.
Yes.
Cisco, and honest to goodness, that's what funded it. And that's what's going to continue to fund 5G. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll hand it back to Mark.
Wow. Sounds like we could go down a whole new hour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to have a whole nother discussion about robotics, robots, which are two different things, I know, but.
They're cool. And we're going to see a lot of it over the next couple of years, everywhere.
It's science today.
One of the things that gets me is that with robots, I mean, I love Star Trek. Data is one of my favorite characters of all time. But we have such, as inhumans, we have such a hard time communicating with each other, just one-on-one. We don't need any more distractions from connecting with the people that we need to connect with. So anyway, that's my biggest worry, that we don't really give ourselves as humans that our own connections as opposed to other connections.
Well, Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk are terrified, absolutely terrified of artificial intelligence. Stephen Hawking, before he died, made it very clear that he felt that was going to be the death of human civilization. And Elon Musk feels the same way. And it could, it could be Skynet for all we know. I mean, 5G could be Skynet. And if you're not a Terminator fan, that's the connection there.
Right.
I mean, there's plenty of others.
Yeah.
Or the Murdochs.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother show I'd love to have.
Yeah.
Like me back.
Well, Lon, This was
Been an
this was
honor.
fabulous. Just like
You're
every other
awesome, Mark.
conversation I've had with you, this has been enlightening and peaceful at the same time. I mean, it's, when you see when you talk about change and you talk about the kinds of things you're doing, it sometimes gets confusing. And talking to you just has made me feel, again, back to that simplicity, that things are accessible, and that we all have a place in this. And I think that's part of one of the reasons why we do this podcast, is to talk about humans having a place and contributing and doing what you did with your 35 people, which was help them all feel like they were involved because you were involved. And for me, that was one of the biggest takeaways today, was how engaged you are and were with your people. Thank you.